Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Planet Tyro with me, your host, Donald Wunder, and my buddy, the Katface Killa.
You son of a bitch.
Me? What did I do?
I know what you did. You took our old recording and you sent it to the makers of Samurai Jack. That's why I got pushed back. They had to redo the whole series.
You really? You really think that they did exactly what we said? I'm not too sure about that.
Not exactly, but they did like a lot of what we said. They probably listened to the recordings like, oh my god, this is it. Fuck it, scrap everything, and then just redid it.
Well, guys, as you can tell from the title of the video, we're back for the finally. They put this series, this last season, on delay for so long. We're back to finish off our Samurai Jack Season 5 spoiler discussion. Guys, this is a spoiler discussion right off the bat. You haven't seen Season 5. I don't know why you're watching this, because we're going to get into it. And by the time I've uploaded this video, it's probably been 2 weeks. We're middle of May, early May, since the finale. We've gathered our thoughts. We've had a think about how we feel about the series, this last season, the ending, how it all matches up on a whole. And now we're going to talk about it. I don't know how long it's going to be, but you know what? I will say this, guys. We're going to get into some fantasy talk about how we thought it should have went, what we might have liked, what we didn't like. I have a different alternative ending, which isn't that much different, but I'll get into that later. So guys, just sit back, enjoy, hypothesize with us, and leave your comments down below and let us know what you think also of the last season of Samurai Jack. So let's get this out of the way. First of all, I was not happy with how long this got delayed, because our last recording was in August and it was meant to come out last November, and it got delayed until February, and then I think it started in March, so people was upset about it. And now we just finished, so I'm going to start right by saying, season done. How do you feel about it? Just right off the bat, how do you feel coming away from the final season?
Pretty good. I would say 85 or 90% of what I wanted. Some nitpicks there. I hate doing this because it's always like I'm contradicting myself, but I wanted more. Like I wanted to be a little bit longer. I think for some things, like they added romance into this last season, and it felt like I understand it was like almost the entire season when I look back at it, but that was only 9 episodes, so it felt like it was kind of rushed. So if that had more time to develop, that would have been great. I mean, I don't think it was necessary, but if you wanted to have that, I think a longer season would have been better for that to be in that storyline. I don't know. I liked it. I was surprised at how dark they decided to go with the tone. Like they definitely heard our recording, man. They had to have.
Generally, I think a lot of people had the same kind of observations we did about the show. So they heard, and I think, Gendy also said he wanted to make it a bit more intense and make it a bit more adult anyway. I came away from the series, thought it was just okay. Like, to be honest with you, it was kind of a little bit of a mismatch. But when I look back on it, for me, the show's always been that way. It had really good episodes and it had very bleh episodes. And this season to me was exactly the same. So to me, it evened out being pretty much the same. Because the thing I just noticed, it was so dark when it started. So dark, so not intense, but very, very dark. Very, very more character driven for Jack as well, which we didn't really get into that much. And then it just, I guess I understand why you have to, it hit its lowest point and we had to rise up from there. It really did swing from one end to the other to me. By the end, it swung from the darkness and death to the happiness and laughter and romance. And the kind of transition to the two, it was okay, but if like you said, it needed more time. If it had more time, like if it had double the episodes, it would have felt a bit more natural, where just like you, it felt more rushed. But as I said in the beginning, when I look back on it, I see Samurai Jack more as a style of a substance with a cool Asian themed storybook kind of feel to it. So I set my expectations. I kind of checked my expectations, to be honest with you. So overall, we'll talk about the ending specifically, because that's the biggest point of controversy with this. I have to say controversy because, yes, controversy is the right word. The very last episode we'll get into near the end. But I will say overall, I thought it was just okay. I actually think it was okay. Overall, I thought so. I wasn't too disappointed. It was okay. It was okay.
I think I'd see it more positive than you do. I think a lot of it has to do with sentimentality, though, like I said, because like I watched this with my parents when I was a teenager, and it's a fun thing for me. So when I look back at this final season compared to the whole run, yeah, like you said, it was mismatched, but I did like that. I mean, I liked that it wasn't always one tone or one note for the whole running of the story. I do feel like not that it switched tone of darkness to happiness in the middle of the season, kind of, that bothered me. It was just that it just like, I think it would have been better if it was the whole way it was kind of more on the dark side instead of flipping like that. But the fact that they did it didn't bother me too much. I just think I would have preferred it stayed kind of a darker tone like they established in the beginning.
You know, I understand. The reason why I'm not so critical on the tonal shift and I don't really enjoy it, I just think it needed more time, is that Jack has been suffering for all these years. So to me, it would have been very... And you know, it's actually funny. When we originally were going to talk about this, when we actually spoke about recording this, you said you wanted to bring up Berserk. And this is the first thing I want to bring up. That Berserk is just so dreary and such a miserable experience for the main character, Guts. His life is just nothing but misery. And, you know, the Japanese can do that. You know, that culture can do that. A lot of their storytelling for a Western audience, for a Western creator, even though I know he's Russian, I believe, I just knew that he wasn't going to just stick to that. I knew it had to be light. So, again, you know what, before we get more into that, because that has a lot to do with the tonal shift, I actually want to go back to the beginning, and I want to start and just talk about some of the early things that really took us by surprise by the beginning. And going back to episode 1, we'll start with this. So when we first see Jack now, you know, we see him, he's on a motorcycle, he's all geared up, he's shooting guns and stuff like that.
Yeah, his facial hair.
And his facial hair. And, you know, from that first, I'll kind of talk about the first 3 episodes. And one of the biggest reveals, which I really was impressed with, and we never really thought of conceptually, was the time displacement idea of Jack not being able to age within this 50-year flash forward or time span, this time we haven't seen him. And I actually thought that was very clever. And I actually thought we was going to get an older Samurai Jack, but I actually thought, you know what? I think that added to the tortureness, like, wow, I can't age, and the misery goes on. So I actually was very impressed, and that really had me excited for the kind of mental torment that was going to bring to the character, which he did use in the first 3 or 4 episodes, which I was very impressed with.
Yeah, I actually really liked that. That he kind of like cracked, because like he was always so stoic in the first, what was it, 4 seasons of Samurai Jack, and then like 50 years later, he's been doing this for so long, and it's clearly taking its toll on him. And like, I think with a lot of stories where there's like a time jump, it's just to power up the characters. But in this case, it was to give him depth. It was to actually accelerate like the character development, because it was slowly building over the first 4 seasons. Like I pointed out before, he's getting like more angry and frustrated, but it was a slow burn. Whereas you're like, you know what? Okay, let's flash forward this 50 years so we can, we don't have to dedicate episodes to that happening, and you just see the end result. And that was a good use of the time skip, I think. Yeah,
it was a really clever idea. And it's funny, I was like, I wish I came up with that idea when we was hypothesizing what they'll do. And the second one, which might be the more important one, is Jack's loss of his sword, which I thought was, again, another really clever idea. And I really felt like it paid homage to, those Asian kind of stories where, the sword... Well, I'm not even going to act like I know that much about Asian stories, but it feels like a metaphor. Everything's about the sword. The sword was his weapon to defeat Aku, and the time displacement and losing the sword, those two together with obviously the constant ongoing of the never-ending battles just completely destroys his mental. I thought this was great. And again, at that point, those first 4 episodes, I just thought this was such an amazing jumping off point. And I was at an all-time high. And I still, even though I know where it ended, and I'll get to the middle part, I actually was so excited, and he actually kind of exceeded my expectations with that setup.
I'm gonna say, yeah, that went way beyond what I thought we were gonna get, and I was super juiced about it. I was so like into it, and I was still into it by the end of it too. But like, just they clearly put a lot of thought into this. This is something that was made with a lot of love. Like, the creator didn't just look at this as like a creator. He's like, what do my fans want to see? They've aged. What did they like about the old one? What would be like the natural progression of this character that would be a really good story for that audience? And he gave that with the first like 3 or 4 episodes, like you said. The other thing too, like, I know you don't want to do a comparison now. We might do a comparison of Samurai Jack with like Berserk or Vagabond later on, but Vagabond is actually a story of Miyamoto Musashi about the samurai spirit and everything. And since you were talking about like the sword and everything, it's not touched about a lot on Vagabond, but in a lot of samurai culture, movies and stories and stuff like that, the sword is actually supposed to be the soul. So like that emphasis translated into Samurai Jack, I thought was a very neat touch. Like, they were like, yeah, it's a magical sword or whatever, but it's also his soul. And they made that a driving point of the story, which I thought was very creative.
Yeah. I just thought it was such a great combination of those kind of traditional Asian tales and those ideas. And I was like, this guy is going to kill it, smack it out of the park. And the last great thing I want to mention is obviously Jack and his psyche, dealing with his psyche. And the most beautiful thing about that, and again, I know I'm overpraising this, but no, I'm not overpraising this. I actually think this was magnificent because Samurai Jack doesn't talk. And this season, we get to hear him internalize and seeing his alter, or not even alter ego, his inner self, hearing the torment and seeing that character going at him. I kind of wish that character was always there. But the difference is that character more manifests in this season because of obviously the torment and the ongoing, the 50 years. So it probably wouldn't have made sense if he was in the earlier seasons. But because he's so quiet, there was that episode where he split in two and he had to fight.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Like, that's probably where the idea came from.
Yeah. I wouldn't imagine, and obviously Jack being a quiet character is actually part of his charm, his persona, which makes him even more traditional. So I don't know. I loved it so much though, but it would have ruined his character if they put it in. But I was just thinking, it might have been nice if we saw him have a little monologue every once in a while. But anyway, so man, moving on from that, I thought all of that was great. All the conceptual ideas of what Jack had been through, and it was absolutely great. And then we're moving on. So we get to one of the bigger plot points of the series, which is the daughters of Aku. Now, when I first saw this, especially the birth scene with this woman giving birth to like 9 daughters, 9 children.
It was very uncomfortable for me to watch with my lady.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what they were insinuating because you actually saw her giving birth 9 times, and later on, everyone was curious how that conception happened. Did Aku have sex with this woman or whatever? When we find out, to be honest with you, I was actually happy how it happened later. I'll explain why.
It's like if he had done the bow chick a while ago, I've been like, I think that's a little too much. I mean, I know you're going for darker and everything, but that's not a coup.
Well, let me bring that. You know what? We might as well bring it up now. When I just saw that he just dropped his essence in the cup and she drank it, I thought that was on tone. I thought that made perfect sense, but it was a little bit of a mismatch because the way they showed her giving birth, it was very horrifying. I mean. But it just put a lot of thoughts in people's head. And to be honest with you, I'm glad they didn't cross that line. And I'm glad they didn't turn Aku into some hentai character. Because that's the kind of thoughts we were having,
Yeah, totally. With his his shape-shifting ability, that's where everybody went.
Exactly. Tentacles. People were thinking tentacle rape. And, even though the woman seemed to be a devout worshipper of Aku. But anyway, so the daughters of Aku, cool idea. Some people, I know I'm going to bring this up and you're going to laugh when I say this. Some people thought it was a bit crazy because they weren't sure of the timeline of the daughters of Aku because they were thinking maybe they grew up very quickly. So later that becomes a problem, but I'll explain why later. But the way they didn't actually show a passage of time, but I don't know. People just thought, were they raised very quickly to be all these assassins, or was this within the 50 years? How old were they? And
I just figured it was over the course of part of the 50 years.
So did I, but the reason why is because one of them ends up being a love interest. So people were digging into the details and wondering. But Hey man, I thought the Daughters of Aku was again a very cool idea. I don't really have any qualms with it. I think, that's what brought Jack to this level of the killing element. These Daughters of Aku were human, and then Jack has an encounter with them. That was another, I think that was like the episode 4 when they were in the snow and Jack.
Yeah, and he ends up killing some of them, and he has to decide, I know they're not robots. I gotta do something. Like it's either I kill them now or I'm gonna get killed. The end. And he has to internalize that kind of torture because he was always a very I don't kill people kind of thing, and that's actually tied to the sword. Because he ends up breaking that because of his anger, he loses the sword. So it's like all tied in very, very neatly together in that regard.
Well, I want to talk about that a little bit more because this is where I don't say I was bothered, but this is where I was kind of like, this is the part people are going to complain. And this is where we get into retconning. And basically, the reason why I bring up retconning is because in that episode, Jack has a particular flashback where he shows, he was with his father, he was riding because they were emperors, right? I think they were like the leaders.
Yeah, his father was the emperor and he's the son. So they're just riding around to whatever.
And they got attacked and his father had to kill them. And his father teaches him a lesson that, I'm just paraphrasing, you have to do what you have to do sometimes. And in life and death, people make their choices. And this is a choice they made. Now, the reason why I say retconning is because they never showed this kind of violence. You're showing us
was
now.
Like, there's like fucking hella blood.
Yeah, they're showing us something now you've never shown us before. Killing. Now, some people, to be honest with you, because Jack always thought robots, it's not retconning in a way because they're just showing us something we might have never seen before. But because some people thought, okay, now you're showing us that Samurai Jack was in a world of violence, of that violence anyway. Some people was like, I don't know. You're kind of showing us that level of violence was always there. For me, I was like, it's one of those ones where it's fine because it's very isolated. And if Jack's in a world of robots, who's to say that wasn't how it's always been? But we come to another episode where the episode with the sword. So I don't know how you felt about that. I thought it was a good lesson. And when Jack had to kill the women as well, I like the fact he actually had to explain, this is your choice. I want you to go. Please go. I don't want to do this. And they were like, you must die, Jack, you must die. And he was like, you've made your choice. And he kills them. And firstly, I like the fact that he completely overpowers them and kills them because to me, that's the skill level Jack is on.
Yeah, he's like on a whole, it's very clear like throughout the series, he's on a whole different level than everybody else. He's the man.
So it didn't bother me. It didn't feel like plot armor or that. Oh, no, I just felt like, no, he's fought Aku to stalemates. He's fought countless robots, 50 years. These women seem to be 20 years old. There's no way they could beat him. And it was great.
What's his face? Like, I thought Scaramouche was like a much more dangerous opponent, and he still, he took care of him easy enough.
That's a good point. And so I should bring up Scaramouche, actually, because Scaramouche is one of the biggest new characters in the show. And, I didn't mind Scaramouche at all. I thought the fact he was rhyme, I know he annoyed people a lot. I actually thought it was funny. I actually thought it was dangerous as well. And that episode with him and Jack, I think it was episode 2. I think it was like the second episode. Or might have even been the first.
No, I think it was the second one. Like, it's when he popped up.
Yeah. I thought that was fine. I thought he was a fine character. Even the last episode when he was just ahead trying to get to Aku, I actually thought it was funny. Maybe a little bit too much. Like, they could have dialed it back 25%, but I actually thought it was fine.
I liked the character. I thought they probably spent a little bit too much time showing him trying to get back to Aku. They probably could have cut out a lot of that. But then you wouldn't have gotten like one of the shockers where he said, man, that guy's head looked like a talking penis. I was like, did he really say that?
Yeah. It felt a little bit forced. It would have been actually. I thought it would have been if he said dick. That would have been even more funny.
Yeah, that would have been better if he had said dick. But it's still like, I like the character. I thought he was very interesting, even though there wasn't a whole lot to him.
So do I. And to be honest with you, I know people just when people saw him, they thought, oh, this is so goofy, but Samurai Jack had goofy characters like that. So I actually like the fact they remind you this is what Samurai Jack is. We're not completely changed it, just tonally completely black. Samurai Jack has these weird characters, weird and wacky characters, especially the enemies. They are very weak, weird and corny, and they can be silly. And I thought he was a really good balance of skilled, funny, and threatening. You know, I thought it was fine. I know people didn't like him, but I thought it was fine.
I liked him. I thought he was pretty neat. I think also like the level of ability he had was it made sense that he was one of the last guys to ever fight Jack.
Yeah. So moving on with it, because now we're about halfway. We're on episode 5 now. So after Jack beats the daughters of Aku, almost 90% of them except for one. And this is where it was a bit of downtime, which again I didn't mind. I still was pretty much enjoying the show where he kind of decided not to kill this one and ended up protecting her. All of that was fine. To be honest, that was kind of the silent episodes where he was just trying to make his way back, and he was the episode where actually he was escorting her against her will, and she was trying to kill him. That was another good episode. I thought that was good. By that time, though, I kind of see where this was going, and a lot of people are like, "Please don't make her a love interest. Please don't make her a love interest because there's not enough time." People already knew there was only 10 episodes, and even I thought, if you're going to make her love interest, I don't think you got enough time. Best to make her an ally, because I don't know if you got enough time for love. The way they ended up doing it was, I think, because they decided to go down the romance route, it was okay, but they didn't have enough time to make it completely convincing, to be honest with you. I know some people could argue, you don't know how much time passed between them, but to be honest with you, it seemed relatively quick. As for, what's her name, Aki? Is it Aki or Ashi?
Ashi.
As for Ashi as a character, I think they did her well enough. They did show her, show flashes of her being the only sister that had a yearning for life, something else. They showed her in the training, so I didn't really have a problem. Well, let me hear your thoughts on that first before we talk about the romances specifically, the transition between her being the assassin to, Jack's ally first.
I thought that was all right. I mean, like I said, I brought it up first. There wasn't enough time for the romance to develop, I think. Like, if it had been a full traditional season, yeah. But it wasn't that terrible, especially the way they decided to do the end. I mean, I think I had a different way I would have liked it, but it was okay.
Well, let's talk about the romance now. To be honest with you, it's like I said in the beginning, Jack had been through so much torment.
Okay.
I said this on our original recording. I actually thought that we were going to start with Jack settling down. Actually, this is what I thought. If you didn't listen to the other one, I'll just say this now. I thought we were going to start the series. Jack had a family. He decided to settle down in this world. He had given up on his family to stick to his quest. And that was the kind of bad thing he did, because Genny was kind of talking about how Jack was a conflicted character and he had done wrong things, which I completely disagree. Now seeing it, I don't know what bad he did, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I just think that I thought that was a love interest. He already had a wife and a child, but he was stuck to defeating Aku that he could never do. So that's what I thought. And in this, I don't know.
I don't know. If I had my way with the way they decided to do things, I said in the original recording, I thought it would be best if he had to give up his way home by killing Aku, which is not what they decided to do. But with the love interest, it kind of makes it less bleak. There's actual reason for him. It's really dark actually when you think about it. There would still be all that suffering for all those years, all that crazy shit, and he'd just be stuck in the future without a Q anymore and his love interest, which I thought I would have preferred that as an ending instead of what they did, which is they went back in time and then he was going to get married to her, but she ceased to exist because she was made from a coup.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, it's just I don't know. I mean, it was an interesting decision to make. I think it was nice.
We're going to dig deep into that right now, actually, because I don't need to skim over. I want to dig deep into that because I'll tell you right now that when the love interest started, that was when people started to fall off. We already said we thought it was rushed, but there was one episode in particular where they were taking, traveling to get to Aku. It's, you know what? I'm so sorry. We got to put that to the side. Actually, the love interest stuff, we'll get to that at the end. We need to focus on one thing in particular. This was actually part of my biggest point of contention, the loss of the sword.
All right, fine, let's do it.
So when we get to the episode where we see how Jack lost his sword, I was really hoping it would be something monumental. And I think he had the right idea. I really do. But the thing that bothered me with this season is that they would show Jack having this torment about people dying or killing people. And let's focus on the episode where this was so particular. These furry creatures are kind of following him to this hill, whatever, and then Jack finds apparently the last portal. He jumps through the portal, then Aku drags him out, and then destroys the portal. Said, "That was the very last portal, Jack. And these furry creatures that were following you, I'm gonna make you fight them." So first of all, my first problem with the episode is that I don't know, number one, why Jack believed him that was the last portal, because Aku is evil, he's a liar. Why would you believe him? I thought that was very naive of Jack, but again, Jack is a naive character, so I gave him a pass for that. Now, as for him fighting the monsters and then feeling guilty about it after because they turned back to normal, I kind of felt this was very, like, this is retconning again, because this happened years ago. When you see this episode, it obviously happened years ago. I think actually this is probably when the 50 years started, when he lost the sword. I'm assuming he lost the sword for 50 years. That's what I'm assuming. Would you say that's right?
I think it's an assumption you can make, but they're never clarify when exactly in the 50 years he lost his sword.
Okay, so he lost it for a good number of years. Aku turned these people to demons. You had no choice. That making them not worthy of the sword, kind of, that's not bad. That's not evil. That's just guilt. So him dropping the sword and losing it is one thing, but it didn't really make sense to me that you're guilty for killing the monsters. That's not the same. I didn't exactly buy that. And then for him saying I couldn't find the sword, it all comes down to guilt. Guilt is the reason he lost the sword, never got it back. I didn't think that was a good enough reason. I really thought guilt. I don't know. Especially if it was, even if it was humans, if it was humanoid people, that would have drove it more. But furry creatures that were turned into monsters that you had to beat because you were going to die, it was not a good enough reason. And maybe because I'm an adult, I just didn't feel it was a good enough reason, to be honest with you.
I think I disagree with this. I do think the human versus furry creature thing probably would have been a better choice, but like, I think you're looking at it as a sword rejecting him, but I see the sword as himself. Like, that's, if he had guilt over this thing, it doesn't matter what it was, that's his soul, so it disconnected from him. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that was harder for me to buy, even that, is just he left it for so long. And then, all right, I'm like, okay, if you're gonna leave it for so long, what's gonna make him get the sword back? And I guess it's a combination of Ashi showing him the error of his ways, which again, I just don't know, because the moments are so fast as well. That's what kind of breaks him out of wanting to go back to get the sword. Someone showing him he's doing good. I don't know. I really like how he got the sword back. That was perfectly fine. Him meditating into himself, going on that journey, meeting those spiritual or cosmic things that gave his dad the sword. That was 100% fine. I absolutely loved that. But I didn't like the fact it was kind of, again, his love interest that had to show him the way to do that. I'm like, I don't know, man. It just, that whole thing. And it was really important for me because losing your sword for so long, I know you kind of, I kind of agree with you. It makes more sense the way you put it, that the sword is a part of himself. I don't know, man. It wasn't bad the way he got to. I know I'm going into it and I'm nitpicking. I do not deny I'm nitpicking. But I was
hey, hold on. You don't have to apologize for anything because, like, we're clearly very big fans of this. So, like, go ahead and say what's bothering you. Don't feel like you gotta apologize for it.
Yeah, that's just how I feel. I was like, but again, it wasn't terrible. Believe me, anime can really fudge at ideas worse than this.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, we've seen so many bad fuck ups. Like, this is a win for me. Like, this is not a failure by any means. Like, it could have been done much better, even great. But I was happy with the way they did it.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I just think it could have been a bit better, to be honest with you. I just wanted the sword thing. it was the first thing that was like, it could have been better. But I love the way he got it back. I thought that was fantastic. And actually, the episode where she has to defend Jack was another stellar episode. And, guys, if you didn't notice, there's way more better episodes that I like in the season. I mean, 75% of this last season, I think is fantastic. It's only the bit we're going to get to now, which we can focus on the romance and the ending now, which I want to get to, which a lot of people have contention with. And I know you quickly went through it. So, again, you kind of already said what you're going to say. And sorry, I know I've been on a bit of a ramble about it. So, all right. So, before I talk about my thoughts on the ending, I want to talk about the feedback from the people. So, from what I've seen, I mean, not just the fans on YouTube and stuff like that, there's been a lot of news articles because it's a big thing. Samurai Jack coming back was a big thing in pop culture because this was really a great landmark cartoon. And again, I know a lot of people think this was a very overhyped series. I said this in the beginning. I really think Jack is a good combination, more style than storytelling. It's simplistic. It's a very simplistic and a very stylized show. It is not a deep show, guys. Me and Old Boy talk about much deeper comment. I know what this series is. So when people were criticizing this, especially at the ending, I had a bit of a grain of salt. But most people's complaint was that it was rushed. It was really, really rushed. And I will say, I'll bring up one thing, which I think was mishandled. I don't want to say mishandled, but a bad opportunity was the Scotsman.
Yeah, I know.
People were so looking forward to the Scotsman, and he comes in one episode, which is pretty funny, pretty good. Even the way Aku kills him, all of that was fine. But you was expecting the way, I think he comes in like 3 episodes before the end, and it doesn't come until the end. And it doesn't really, I don't think they handled that very well, to be honest with you. The Scotsman in particular.
Yeah, I mean, like, this was something a lot of true fans like you and I were really looking forward to because he makes an appearance in every season, and you know he obviously appears in this one. So a lot of people were thinking about the other times he appeared in the stories, which were like grand adventures with Jack, and in some cases they were even 2-parters. I think like there was one that was a 2-parter, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So like they were expecting something big, and he just kind of had like a cameo instead.
Yeah, he really did have a glorified cameo, but his episode was fine. I really wanted him to play a bigger part, but I guess if you look at it in retrospect, he played the part he kind of always plays, a cameo. Now that you mentioned that, but because he was geared up for the war, and it seemed like they brought him in that I think it was 4 episodes before the end, and then there's Jack and Ashi again, and at the very, very, very end, like the last 10 minutes, and he comes back in. It's like you kind of foreshadowed this a bit more. I thought he was going to be more intertwined in the end. So, all right, so let me not beat around the bush. People thought, from what I can see, it's kind of 60-40 on the ending. 60% of the people actually feel like it was rushed. They were disappointed. And I'll get into things. I thought the ending was rushed. I think, to be honest with you, I don't want to really bring this up. I think he took the idea from an anime. He took the ending because it's very similar to one of the greatest animes of all time.
Really? What anime?
Gurren Lagann.
Oh, I didn't watch or read that. That's why I don't know.
It's amazing. Gurren Lagann is absolutely fantastic, and it's the same ending, which is, it doesn't ruin Gurren Lagann at all, by the way. I will actually talk about what I wish happened with the ending, but man, I like the fact. Let me talk about the things I like. I like the fact that it ended up being Ashley versus Jack. It was a turnaround. I don't know why I didn't see it coming, but she's part of Aku. I thought that was fine. Here's my problem with the ending. Very simple. And I know people are going to hate me for it. And I actually want to explain what I would have done with the ending. You're building up to this fight with Jack and Aku for so long. Jack and Aku had 2 episodes of previous fights that were very focused and very cool. The first one was Jack and the ghouls or the ghosts or whatever in the graveyard, which honestly is almost my favorite Samurai Jack episode. The fight between Jack and Aku is so good in that episode. The second one is called Jack versus Aku, where they fight. It's a bit more silly.
Well, they try to establish like rules, and like they both are trying to bend the rules.
Yeah. So again, it was silly, but it was another episode. So I was actually expecting a spectacle fight. All the war things that happened, I was expecting that as well. I was actually expecting all of that corny stuff where everyone Samurai Jack met came to help him, but I was expecting a 1-to-1 awesome fight that we've seen before. And what we end up getting is a very, very quick finish, which I think was very disappointing. I was like, wow, man, you've had better fights with Aku. I was disappointed. It wasn't terrible, but I was disappointed.
It was an interesting idea, but like you said, I think everybody wanted like an epic fight against Aku. That's what we've all been waiting for, is the final fight. And the way that they chose for him to get out of his situation, I think they could have still used that, but they should have gave us a real fight between the two. Like just to inject that real fast.
It's funny you say that, because even when you hear my version of the ending, all it is a more detailed version of what happened. But let me just quickly get to the other end. So after Jack beats Aku, the whole thing with Ashi and the marriage, all that, people hated it just because they said it was cliche. It was kind of done. And if you watch Gurren Lagann, it's an exact copy of that. And, don't get me wrong. I was actually very upset to think Jack was just going to have a perfect ending. Beat Aku, jump into his hands in the end. I thought that was silly. But the way she died, and I was like, okay, I don't mind that Jack didn't have a perfect ending either, but this doesn't seem right either. And the ending with him onto the tree with the butterfly and the color, underwhelming. It was fine. I was like, I really wanted you to end on a high. And I think when you said this so many times, end on a high. End on a put so much into your ending, because that's the last thing people are going to remember about your show. I know you should be less superficial than that, but the ending is the last thing, the last taste in your mouth. And the majority of people, I have to say, thought it was underwhelming and lackluster. They didn't hate it, they just thought underwhelming, and so do I. But I don't think it was terrible. I was just like, And I guarantee you, if you go to any YouTube channel, big, small, and you put in Samurai Jack ending, 90% of the people I saw said, I don't know how to feel about the ending. I'm kind of meh about it. And, it wasn't terrible. And, man, I tell you, man, for all the build-up, all these years, that is kind of a disappointing way to see it in the grand scheme of the critical feedback. And the majority of people have just said it's a meh ending overall.
No, I can't say it's not a meh ending. I mean, I think with the tonal decision they, especially in the beginning of the season, that they wanted to do, I think Bittersweet, which is what the ending was, is the right choice instead of like a super happy ending or super sad ending. I think Bittersweet is a good ending to that. But like you said, with the pacing of it, I think like if he had to kill Aku and just stay in the future with her, and that could have been his bittersweet ending,
yeah, it
would have been better. Like I would have liked that a lot more.
You know what? I've spoken so much. What I want to hear now, how would you have ended it? What, in your opinion? Because I got my story, my rewritten. I want to hear what you would have done with the ending.
I probably would have had a lot of the same stuff happen, but like I said, everybody wanted to see him fight Aku. Like that's what we've all been wanting. It's like that final fight. So I probably would have had it where he fought Aku and he had, this is like basically the same thing. He just had Ashi there, and that was the difference maker between all the previous times he ever fought Jack, is having Ashi there, and that was like, tipping the scale. Then probably do the same thing where it's like he reached out to her and, he got her back out. But instead of having like the same powers of Aku, she didn't, and just killing Aku got him stuck in the future. And that's how I probably would have done it.
Anything else? Anything? Because mine was a bit long, but I thought about it, and I think my ending is a real perfect ending.
No, I mean that's good enough. I would have liked that ending. I would have liked your ending too. I mean, this ending, not terrible. It's serviceable. It's not terrible, but it's not great.
You know what? And honestly, I'm not in Gendy's mind or anything. Although I do feel like he said this is my ending, I feel like he wanted more time. I haven't researched it yet, but I bet if I look into it, I bet later when we're going to hear, he wanted more time. And to be honest with you, I've even heard rumors there still might be a Samurai Jack movie.
What, that covers like the 50 years? I don't understand what you would do at this point with Samurai Jack.
Oh, I know. We'll talk about that. But before we talk about the future Samurai Jack, let me talk about my ending. Now, the reason why I think my ending, and I will say it, I'm going to be very arrogant, say it's the perfect ending, is because it doesn't really change much of the actual ending. And my ending addresses most people's complaints that I didn't bring up. What I would have done is very simple, okay? Pretty much the same thing happens with the war and obviously Jack being held by Aku, but Ashi is helping Jack like he did before, but I want Jack to beat Aku twice. Firstly, I want Ashley to help him get his sword back, and then Jack say, I must beat him on my own. And they have another long drawn out fight where Aku is transforming into all his pieces, and Jack, they have that in the future. They have a long drawn out tactical, classy, flashy fight with all the cut screens and all the flashy, and he just outclasses him and beats him. Now, after he beats Aku, after he beats him with pure skill, and we get an awesome fight, after Aku's dead, Ashley says to him that I feel my power fading, that she feels because he's dying, that she hasn't got long to live. So in the future, Jack says all his goodbyes, says, I wish I could stay here, but I have to undo the past. This is one thing people complain about. He never said goodbye to anyone. Everything happened so quickly. All of his friends gone. I would have fixed that. I would have him. After he beat Aku, he says goodbye, says, I'm sorry. Thank you all. I need to make sure this never happens. I love you all. Say goodbye to the Scotsman. Say this goodbye. Ashley's fading away her powers, but she takes Jack back. She goes back with Jack. Then when he gets back to the past, he has to beat Aku again. Same way they did in the ending. He comes very quickly, and this time he beats Aku as quick as he did. It's the same way he did very quickly in the past. We don't need to see a quick one. We just need to see Aku like, you're back! And Jack just kills him quickly because we don't need to see a long drawn out battle this time. She's fading away, and we can see that clearly. It's not a surprise, but because she's in the past and because she wants to see life, she sees the past. I mean, just have a scene where Jack kind of carries her out as she's dying, and he kind of shows her the past. And then what I mean is that he comes out of Aku's cave as corruption, and she sees the landscape, she sees all the butterflies. She said, thank you for showing me the past. I wish we could be together. She fades away. That's it. They don't have any marriage scene. It kind of ends there after the battle. She fades away. He's sad. Then you see Jack go back to his kingdom. You see him just walking around. You see him kind of getting a bit older. You see him just talking about his legend. He's kind of in a very quick flash forward scene. And you just see him with the sword. And you kind of have the same ending where he's just looking in the distance for a butterfly. Same thing. That's it.
Oh, that would have been a pretty awesome ending, actually, dude. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that would have been really like I was saying, I think Bittersweet was the right tone to end this season and the whole story as a whole. And I think that's a very good level of Bittersweet, and logical too.
It's the same kind of ending. It's just more. You get the great ending. He kind of, him and Ashley were not going to be. Everyone knows that it would have been too happy. So, but she gets to see, the beauty that she wanted to see. Jack gets to show the past, and all that stuff. So I was just like, I don't know, man. I just wish he had more time. But everyone's main complaint was that Jack completely eradicated the future without saying goodbye to anyone. And I actually thought that was a bit of an oversight because Jack spent so much time in that future, made all these characters, and the only person, he didn't even say goodbye to the Scotsman. He just had they had a little funny banter at the end, which was funny. This is my girl, and that was funny. But he never said goodbye, even though he was a spirit. And he did eradicate that future. And we don't know if this is a timeline thing because some people said that. I know I'm really getting into it now. Some people said that when Jack jumps to the past, straight away in the middle of that fight of Aku, he never beat Aku. So there could be a timeline where he just left Aku with all the people.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say it's split timelines possibly.
Exactly, it's possibly. So how do you know this isn't because time travel? There's so many different times of time travel. I actually like the fact that Ashley just helped him jump back, and Aku was like, "Oh shit, that was funny." I was like, "Ha ha, you bitch."
That actually was a really good laugh right at the end.
I was hoping he would have a great battle with Aku. When Aku said, "You're back already," I thought they were gonna have a cool fight, but it just ended quickly. So, one of the last ones I want to talk about before I talk about the future of Samurai Jack, because there might be a slight one, and I think when you hear it, you'll understand a bit more. I don't want to forget this. We need to talk about Aku himself, the actor playing him and his little journey. We spoke about everything else apart from Aku himself. Now, first of all, just to address the elephant in the room, the previous voice actor that played Aku did pass away. So we've got the new voice actor for Aku, and there was first of all, I think the first time we heard him was in episode 1 where he was on the phone with Scarabushi or whatever. And when I heard him first, I thought, I don't like this. It doesn't really sound right. But in the last couple of episodes, I thought he was good. I thought, no, he's actually pretty good at Aku voice.
I think with practice, he got closer to Mako, but I attributed the first time you hear him and how his voice is a little bit different to him being stressed out over the 50 years. He can't really age, but in a sense of age to him because he does sound older.
Yeah. And Aku as a cat, what they did for his character, I love the fact. I actually thought it was still good. Aku was a comical character. It was great. I was scared that they were gonna make him just more violent and, you know, to match the tone they were gonna change. They didn't change him at all. I love the fact he was kind of, you know, in therapy with himself, and Jack being around was a thorn in his side. It was pretending to bother him, but it did. He was just as funny as always, and I really was happy they did not mess Aku up. And although he wasn't in it a lot, when he was great, and I was so happy that Aku was still a good shining point to the very end. Even at the end where he had the last battle, he was consistently funny. And I have to say, man, Aku is one of my favorite antagonists just because he's so evil yet so funny. And I have to say, honestly, how many times in animation do they do a character who is evil and funny and you believe it? And I have to say it's not amazing, but it is really well done. And to the very end, they got that 100% correct.
Yeah, I feel the same. Like, when I want an evil cartoon character, I want to go to a cartoon and get it. Not like Walking Dead, where, you know, it's supposed to be more serious and the guy's a fucking cartoon.
Negan. Yeah, you got
fucking Negan, man. But, like, yeah. He was really good. Like, the whole run through, even with the new voice actor, I think he didn't like smash it, but he did good enough that the character itself was still great. And, like, I think Aku might actually be my favorite villain of all time, just because the chemistry of him being evil, but comical, often not intentionally trying to be comical, but he is to the audience.
Yeah.
Makes the story entertaining. It makes it like a whole other level of entertaining. And then his powers as well is really neat.
Yes.
Some of the more magical things is like whatever, but like his shape-shifting ability, I think that's like one of the scariest powers somebody could have. I mean, the only other thing I could think of that's scarier is the ability to stop time. That's the only thing I could think that's on that level.
That was the only complaint I had even in the last review. The fact he had time controlled abilities was a bit of a hack, was way too past. Like, wow, he could do and he can, you know, time, more or less time travel or whatever, control time in a sense. So, but I love the fact in the end that was used against him, which was a really good, you know, final thorn in his side. And and I love the fact when Jack, and actually, how could I forget to address this? I said this to you off mic. We spoke a couple of weeks ago, and I said to you, all that time, Jack never had his sword. Aku never knew. I actually thought it was a missed opportunity. I was very disappointed. I thought, wow, man, I actually thought it would have been interesting to see Jack stay alive with Aku on his ass without the sword. And, you know, by the time Aku found out he got the sword back, I was really disappointed. But what made it awesome is it didn't make a difference. And actually, after all that, it didn't matter that Jack got his sword because you know, conveniently, Aku had a weakness right in front of him, which was Ashi, and the way he teased him, this is great. And I thought that was a great kind of a double twist, because you was expecting this is going to be the end, and I really, really enjoyed that. And actually, they had a little mini fight just before Aku realized that she was his child or whatever. Jack couldn't still beat Aku. Aku was like, every time, consistently through this series, every time Jack fought Aku, Jack was like a toy. And all Aku did was like, you know, wrap around him, go through. It was like, you know, and I love the fact, even when Jack got his sword in this final season and he quickly fought Aku, it didn't make a difference. So it made sense that Ashi was what Jack needed to beat him. It really did make sense at the end, but it still doesn't matter. I still wish I got a final fight. So, you know.
Yeah, I would have liked, everybody would have really liked a big final fight. But like you're pointing out, the only time Jack ever clearly beat Aku is the very first time. And that's because Aku didn't know the sword could hurt him. I think that's like literally the only reason why Jack beat him. And it's plausible too.
Yeah. So, man, we've covered nearly everything in you know, I just want to say in summary before I talk about the future of Jack. Samurai Jack, to me, is consistent in every single season. I found episodes I really liked and episodes I found meh, and this season was exactly the same. This season, I will say, had great episodes. The episode where Jack had to fight all the daughters was excellent. The episode where Jack was bleeding and he had to go in the cave was excellent. The Jack where had to get his sword back in his own inner mind was excellent. You know, more good than bad, just like the other seasons. So to me, it's consistent in that way. My expectations was always kept, but they dropped the ball on not having a really great, memorable ending. For me, that was the really disappointing part. But in general, if I had to give the whole series a rating, I would give it a very high, solid B plus. Solid B plus. I know it should be a low first class, but that ending, man, that ending really just took it out of the first class for me, which is really disappointing to me. And I will also add to that 15 years of waiting. I'm sorry. I can't really let that go. So I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say, I think for the average fan, like you're really into it, your rating's on point. Like it should be a very high, solid B. If you liked the first, I think like 4 seasons or whatever before the big wait, see the last season, you'll enjoy it. You might be a little miffed by the ending, like he was saying. For me, I think I enjoyed this season more and the story as a whole. I think even in the last recording, I think I enjoyed Samurai Jack more than you did. So It's like a low first class for me. But I think the average fan is, like you said, high solid B.
Oh, not my friend Anime Slob. He just released a video where he hates. He's always hated it. So you know him. But I was laughing. I watched his review. If you're listening, Slob, you're such a fucking hater. But I know some people that. Hey, I said this in the beginning. I was a Samurai Jack hater, but for slightly different reasons. I thought the series was a bit of a poser overall, but I understand what Samurai Jack is. It's more of a stylistic show with a very simple, traditional story, and it held true to that to the end. I think it was consistent, and even though they tried to make it more edgy and gritty at the end, it still wasn't done in a desperate way. It still made sense, and it still evened out. They balanced it out at the end. They added, the drama, the intenseness, and they balanced it out with the comedy and the romance and the lightheadedness. And it ended with a bittersweet ending, which it should. So overall, I still think Samurai Jack is a consistent show with highs and lows. So, and still better than a lot of anime over the years I've seen.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, not just anime, cartoon, TV shows, everything, comics. It's above average for sure, and depending on your particular taste, it could be like a low first class, like for me, or it could be a high solid B.
Yeah. So, lastly, let's talk about the future Samurai Jack. Well, I know some people are like, the future Samurai Jack is over. I'm going to give a little spoiler to something I'm going to do later. So, I've nearly finished my retrospective on Lupin the Third, and one of the last videos I'm going to do is a Lupin the Third movie, which is basically the summary of the series, which is called Italian Game. Anime do this a lot. Anime will have series, and then they'll have a movie, which is just a rehash of the series, just on fast forward and maybe with better animation. So a lot of people are saying that, Gendy might do that and might give it a different ending. They might make a movie version of Samurai Jack, which is just a rehash of the whole thing, just in the movie version, which I think could work.
Maybe. I don't know. I think if you're not gonna sit with that as your ending, which it has its positives and negatives. If you want to end the story there, then what you should be doing is like opening up the storyline for more seasons. Because like the big problem with this season was it was rushed. There was not enough time. You needed more episodes, and then you talk about doing a movie, which is even more constrained in time. No, if you want to continue the story and do some stuff with it, like open it up where Aku, he has the power of time travel. We said this before. Maybe it doesn't work on himself, but clearly he can send other things and people through time. So he sends people and assassins back in time to attack Jack, either as an extension of this story, or like we're saying, where it's splintered and he never beat Aku in the future. He has to go back to the future and defeat Aku. But these are things that are not a movie. I think. Well, maybe going back to the future and beating Aku and giving you that final fight, but. I think that's a movie versus extending the series with more seasons is a mistake. And usually I'm like the less is more guy.
If I had my choice, I would prefer just basically what you said. I would prefer more time. To be honest with you, just like Fist of North Star, I'm not sure if I want to see a reboot of this at all because, 20 years from now, when they're in another retro phase where they want to go back and reboot something, they could pick up Samurai Jack. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they would change the tone from the beginning and make it, completely rewrite it so it's humans and machines from the beginning. If they made, it'd be so funny. How would you feel, funny enough, if an anime studio just decided to make an anime version of Samurai Jack with his blessing, and then basically we got an alternate version of Samurai Jack, which does involve the same kind of story, but in the future he does fight humans as well, and it's
from
more
like
gritty.
the get-go.
Yeah.
I would feel very interested and excited if he had either creative control or he was a consultant on it, on the creation of it.
I think that's a must. I think that's a must.
Yeah, but if they are like, no, we're just picking it up and we're doing it ourselves, this is our take on it, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, this usually doesn't work out.
No, I think if you let the Japanese storytellers, they'll just write something completely different. I mean, we saw, what's that anime we saw? It's at Shiguri, about the two.
Oh yeah, oh dude,
man,
holy shit.
Or Basilisk. I mean, I know what anime would give me. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to generalize. I have a feeling, I kind of have a feel from what I would get from a Japanese author. So I wouldn't mind an anime version. I think it could happen because sometimes, Powerpuff Girls, Batman, anime have actually taken some Western cartoons that actually made them animes. So Samurai Jack, I think with Gendi's oversight would be very cool. Very cool, actually. But that's not in the cards. A movie is more likely, and I do think, I think it's likely, but we'll see. There's mumblings about it now. I do want to end in saying, I really have a feeling Gendi wish he had more time. Gendi, I keep saying his name wrong. Gendi I wish he had more time.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are buddy. Clearly, you affected the way he created this season, so you gotta say his name right.
You're so funny. I have no
seriously,
clout.
that's like, it's episode 4 or 5. I was like, dude, I think he fucking sent him the recording. This is fucking like almost spot on.
Nah, saying that honestly makes us sound like we're coming up with some unique genius idea. No, most people had the same train of thought we did on the previous recording. So honestly, he knew where it needs to go. But again, I just think he didn't have time for the ending, which is surprising since it took so long for it to come back. But anyway, I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything else you want to say on the Samurai Jack season 5 or the rest of the show?
Samurai Jack, as a whole, I still think I love it. Like, I'm not in love with it, but I love it. It has a special place in my heart, and I'm not super disappointed. I lower expectations based off of when people drop off a series and then they pick it back up, years later. I thought this was going to be like, I wanted it to be really good, but, statistically, these sort of things don't pan out. So it's like a really cool thing that, like, if you're a fan, check it out for sure. There's way more positive than there is negative.
Sure, I agree.
If you like Samurai Jack, if you like the aspects of that they were incorporating it into it of the samurai spirit and Bushido and stuff, check out a manga called Vagabond. This is one of my favorites. Someday I'm going to talk about it soon. Maybe even comparing it to Samurai Jack. I haven't exactly decided if I want to compare Samurai Jack to anything or if I want to just leave this as our one recording on it. If you like the darker aspects of this season in Samurai Jack, check out a manga called Berserk. Don't watch it. The original anime, not terrible, but it's more lighthearted than the overall dark tonal setting of the comic Berserk, that Japanese comic Berserk. So those are two stories that on different spectrums of Samurai Jack you may also enjoy. But Samurai Jack itself, I mean, like I already said, like, don't do a movie. Do it like another season, the way I said it. Like, one of those storylines, you're good, Yendi. Okay, don't fucking do a movie.
I'm surprised Solo gets a movie because, again, I don't really think Samurai Jack is all that story driven. I think it's very simple. I think it would make a really cool action animation movie.
I think as a movie, give us a final fight with Aku. I mean, that's just make part of it getting to Aku and then have a good fight with him, that everybody wanted. That's like a movie amount of time. If you want to give us more Samurai Jack in the sense of the old Samurai Jack, or even in this new way where, hopefully less rushed, but with that darker tonal shift, like, you can extend the story. You can actually make it story driven by having him become the emperor in the past, where Aku that he did not defeat in the future is sending assassins in the back, back into time after him. Or where he's trying to get over to the future. That could actually become like a long-running storyline. I think they showed with this last season, they can do ongoing storyline. If they have the mindset ahead of time, they could put out a pretty good storyline. I mean, like we said, there's negatives to this, I think, mostly because they did 10 episodes and they should have done like 20 or something instead. But they can do like a coherent storyline that was very good. Like, if you actually piece all the episodes together and you watch it, like you binge it or something, there aren't pauses in between any of these episodes. This is like one run, timeline wise. So I think it was good. I mean, I don't see why they couldn't do a actual, like, from this point on we're gonna be story driven sort of idea. I mean, if they just left it, or if they just did a movie where we got that great fight with Aku, I'd be fine with that. But if you want to try to do like another insular story and you're gonna do even less time than you did with this season, I don't know about that. I'm very hesitant.
Let me ask you one more question, because I nearly forgot to ask you this. How would you feel about Samurai Jack world building? Because this is obviously, even though if we think about it, it's kind of a this we've shown that this is intergalactic. Aku was actually a space evil or something. You know, people have come from space. The people that gave him the sword seem to be a mixture of space and legendary creatures. There's a universe. You know, maybe Jack's descendants, or no, not descendants, his children, or his future lineage can do something. Do you think? Would you be interested?
I would be, yeah. You're talking about descendants, so that was the right word.
Okay.
Yeah, if they decided to do what I said, like they stick with him in the past and how he becomes emperor and stuff, I'd love to see that.
No. I'm talking about that.
But that's not the world that you're talking about. You're talking about like the future.
Yeah.
So like I would be fine with that because like we pointed out, he didn't kill Aku in the future, so that future still exists. And like if you want to just scrap the storyline of where he went back in time, and defeated Aku for good, and you wanted to stick with like that's done. It's wrapped up. There's no more of this, and we're gonna go forward with Aku still alive. And then you're saying like with his descendants.
Well, no. Actually, no, not Aku at all. I'm just talking about Aku is like the personification of evil. Evil never really dies, and he came from space. There could be something else that comes, or there could be because of another planet, or there's a legend to Samurai Jack. It could go 100 years in the future, another character with Jack's blood and another evil. I know people frown upon that kind of stuff, but would that be something you might be open to with Gendy on the helm writing this again? If he had something.
There's no way I would not check it out. I'd be hesitant though because, like I said, these sort of things normally don't pan out.
No, they don't.
But I think they've shown that they have the ability for sure to do it. And I mean, like if they have control over
Samurai Jane.
Yeah, like do a female character. People would love that shit so much. Like if they did a female Samurai Jack and it was like one of his descendants.
Yeah, man.
So we're talking about the same universe in the future. I would be like, one of the biggest things I would be paying attention to is the villain, because we've already said this like way a lot in the previous recording and in this recording a little bit at the end.
You're right.
Aku is what makes this story, so you need that kind of antagonist, it doesn't necessarily have to be the comical evil chemistry that Aku had, but it has to be a really good villain. He has to have really cool powers. He has to be entertaining in some form, not necessarily comical, but he or she needs to be very entertaining to watch, because that was the driving point of the whole series of Samurai Jack. Is Jack still a character and he's there, but a lot of people are watching this because Aku entertained them. I mean, that's the bottom line of it.
Yeah, you know what? Funny enough, I think I'm gonna use a title. I'm probably gonna get Samurai Jane in the title somewhere, because I like this train of thought. And guys, let us know what you think in the comments down below. You've heard our conversation. You've heard us go on about this for a while. I was actually looking for this kind of conversation we had online. I could only find people reacting, and I kind of wanted to hear people go more deep into it. So guys, if you enjoyed the discussion, you've got thoughts about anything we said, or you want to build upon it, please let us know in the comments down below, whether you're listening on YouTube or you're on the podcast. I know we're in the world of franchises and sequels, stuff like that. I don't know, man. I think time will tell where Gendy's mind is at with this, whether he wants to continue the lineage, this timeline, a different character, the same universe.
Oh, you know what? Hey, speaking of that, one of my all-time favorite stories, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and they do that. So it's like, are you saying, is that your pitch? Oh yeah, fuck yeah, I buy that up. I love that idea. I love the idea of a changing protagonist. If you're gonna continue a story, don't give me the same fucking guy for like 50 years. Change
Goku,
it up.
Fucking Goku.
Yeah. That's why I can't watch Dragon Ball Z. Like, if you had given me new characters as a protagonist, I probably would have checked it out at least a little bit. But it's like, what, Goku again? No, thank you. So that's one of the things I love about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. They go through time. You get different protagonists. You get different storylines. You get different villains. You get different everything. You get different powers. Hey, you want to do a Samurai Jack? Call Gendy right now. give him this recording because I know you guys are talking to each other, and just let's see what happens. Maybe he'll say, "What, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? What's that?" And then you'll check it out and be like, "Oh my God, this is an awesome idea! I'm going to do that."
You know what, man? Honestly, of all the ideas, I wish more creative people milked the timeline, the generational timeline. I just wish that was an idea more people took on board, and I'm just so surprised that I can't find it. Even Avatar had that, by the way. That was one of the best things about Avatar Last Airbender, which I don't think you watched. It has that in its franchise as well, even though they only did that in 2 generations. It really oh man. Anyway, let's not go on that tirade, guys. Again, oh boy, I want to thank you for joining me on this one, because you are a Samurai Jack fan. You even got me more interested in, and I was really happy to have you on to have this conversation with.
Yeah, I was totally looking forward to having the talk and everything. And like, even back in the day, this was one of the titles I really wanted to talk about, because like, I'm still doing the anime and manga thing. I'm still trying to clear out that list, but this is one of the things I really wanted to talk about.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm really glad we're in a time where a lot of series get to finish. We're in the Netflix era. Let's just call it the Netflix era, where things that didn't end get to end. Things get renewed. It's a really good time to be a fan of anything, because honestly, people are looking for chances to. I know it's a bit cheap. They are people just looking for established franchises because it's kind of an easy win. They've already got a fan base, so it's kind of more safer to do that than a completely new idea. But man, like you said, JoJo and this, I mean, it's a really good time to be a fan. Let me not go on anymore. Guys, if you really like discussion, give us a thumbs up. Again, I've said it 3 times. Leave a comment down below. We love conversating with you guys. And until the next one, I want to say thank you, and stay tuned to Planet Tyro for more content from the Katface Killa. He's got a lot of solo recordings that we're going to put in the description. If you like him, he's got a lot of recordings he's already done. And you know what we've got going on here already. And, stay tuned for more content. And as always, thanks for listening.
Yeah. Hey, anybody with a Netflix connection, try to get a Carnival that ended too. Like, I'd like to see that started up again. That was a really cool storyline. Thanks for dropping by and checking us out.
I'll put a link in the card if you guys don't want what you just mentioned there. Don't worry.